We are talking about the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence. And in studio to help us have this conversation, we do have two lovely ladies. Judy Oduor from Action Aid Kenya. She is the program's coordinator. Judy, a very good morning to you. Welcome to Radio Generation.
Thank you so much for having me here today.
Karibu sana. Then also we have the chairperson of the Association of Media Women in Kenya, AMWIK, Robi Koki Ocheng. Robi, karibu tena sana to Radio Generation.
Asante sana.
Let's talk about the 16 days of activism. And I'll start with you, Robi. What are they all about?
Well, if you go back to the history of, activism around gender issues, it started all in 1991 at the Rutgers University, where there was a group of activists who put together an agenda to make sure gender violence or gender issues become human rights issues that have attention to, world bodies like the UN and as such.
Right.
So that is the nemesis of it. And over time, if you go back to the Beijing platform declaration, it really empowered women over the years to achieve in terms of leadership, education, and all that. But as time goes on, as women got into the work environment or in domestic arrangements,
yes,
you would find that there would be some sort of like violation, which is human rights. And of course, over time, it just doesn't focus on just women. It will focus on those with sexual minorities. And also today, I think it also focuses on men.
When you say sexual minority, what do you mean?
I mean those who are in the LGBTQ community.
All right. Okay.
Yeah.
Understood.
Yeah.
Okay.
So generally, the idea is to just make people realize or celebrate 16 days. That's from 25th November on to 10th December, just to remember about, how humane we should be to each other and how to kind of not normalize violations either at the workplace, at home, or in the community.
Yeah. And I found out nowadays that gender-based violence has become even broader than what we used to think back in the day, because it was just all about a husband against a wife or a wife against a husband.
Yeah.
And of course, you've rightly mentioned also sexual minorities, but also there's this other issue of talks of this killing of women randomly in the street. What's the name?
Femicide.
Thank you. That has now also been broadened and has been inculcated into this conversation on GBV.
Yes.
Wow. All right.
Yeah.
Judy, maybe from your perspective, you can let us know what are some of the things or issues your organization is working on currently in regards to this conversation?
So for us as Action Aid Kenya, our main focus would be around issues women and girls. We like to say we are very unapologetic about taking sides with women and girls, because we understand that they're the most marginalized historically and even up to now in terms of issues, leadership, just like she said, issues of gender-based violence, issues of land rights and all that. So when we focus on issues of gender-based violence, we look at how can we empower the communities, especially the women that are part of these communities, to be able to stand up for their rights, to be able to challenge violence in the spaces that they're in. And this includes knowledge around rights, what rights are there, what frameworks are there that protect them from violence, what do they need to do in case a violence occurs. And it's not just like you've said, gender-based violence is quite broad. There's domestic violence, there's female genital mutilation, there's child abuse, which includes defilement and many other forms of violence in it. So looking at what are the channels of reporting that exist within your community. But if it's not within your community, then how do you strengthen those channels that are there? How do you work with the chiefs? How do you work with the police? How do you work with the nyumba kumis that are there? How do we strengthen these mechanisms that are put in the community to be able to protect the women and girls? But also beyond that, looking at what are the root causes and how do you address those root causes of violence? Is it issues of patriarchy? Is it the notion that communities have about women, and how can we change that? Is it about enhancing positive, male masculinity, having male champions in communities that say, hey, women are also human beings, they need to be treated in a certain way, but also looking at many organizations, even within the national government in itself, they have channels of reporting, free services where you can just report, and then of course you're linked to various services. For ActionAid, we also have such a reporting system that is existing where communities can send a message. It's a free SMS platform where communities send just a simple word, help, to a number 21094, and then they are able to be linked to various services, legal, medical, psychosocial, just to name a few. Yeah.
Something that I've often wondered about, and I'm going to wonder aloud so that you can assist me. There's a term that we use very, very often, and we meaning Kenyans in general, and it's used in all manner of different fora.
Yeah.
The term is empowerment. Within the context that we're now speaking of GB, how does empowerment manifest? How do you, the activities that are related to empowerment, they are usually stated very clearly, but how does it manifest? For instance, now I am sitting on this chair.
Yeah.
If I put my hand across my chest, do I look empowered?
Of course you do.
So for me, the key word there is power.
Yes.
Yeah. So a lot of times in our society, there's a power imbalance. You find that because of different reasons, there are people who have more power than other people. And because of that power, some choose to misuse that power. So the term empower is then a form of shifting that power to another person who's been vulnerable in a situation. So this power can be shifted in the form of knowing your rights. So you previously did not know that there's even a law around, protection against domestic violence, but suddenly you're aware of it, and therefore the next time you're violated, there's a law that can protect you. You've already given that person the power. Previously, you depended on somebody fully 100% for all your needs, and suddenly you are able to now go, maybe sell mboga somewhere, or be able to go back to school or something. That gives you power. So you're in a situation where now somebody can no longer just tell you depend on me for everything, So you've given them power. So for me, that is empowerment. It's
so it from what you're saying, there is a constitution, there are a Bill of Rights, but there's pushback against this, and it appears like the cultures that we subscribe to within the different nations of Kenya, the communities as we call them, this is what tends to push back on these rights. But the culture as it's represented now, are they really fair representations of the culture as it was, or is it the fast forward morphing of a culture where what had previously been there seems to have been forgotten and overtaken by other aspects? I'm going to explain what I mean.
Yes.
Culturally, the community I come from are called the Luo.
Yes.
People were polygamous, and when someone was polygamous, it also meant they were wealthy, because you needed to pay dowry for wives, and you couldn't pay for more than one wife if you didn't have the cows.
Yes.
So when you found somebody with many wives, it means they also had, and every wife was allocated land. Children, the idea of child mortality and so forth played into it, but that was your agricultural strategy and livelihood plan.
Yeah.
So every woman had their piece of land, actually had, and it was known that is so and so's, just like they had their house and so forth. What am I saying? Within that same community, when there were issues that needed to be discussed, disputes resolved, women were part and parcel of that process, and they were also allowed to speak, just like the men were. So when I look at the history, that particular aspect, women were not considered to be inferior. In fact, the first wife had a role and had power that was clear, and was often even a reference point where the man of the home would say, you need to go and ask so and so. You need to. And the other wives also kowtowed and ensured that they followed that hierarchy. Now, this isn't a spiel for promoting polygamy. No,
but it's okay to be polygamous.
Yeah, well,
I think you get the
but if you look at what you've said critically, you're talking about a man having to pay dowry.
Yes.
In those days, it looked like an exchange. And
in those days, did it look like an exchange?
Yes, it did. It did look like an exchange.
And
it was transactional.
It was transactional. And again, having many children then, like you said, is an agricultural strategy.
Yes.
Meaning that you'll have free labor.
And a security strategy as well.
You'll have
and also a wealth accumulation strategy if you had many daughters.
Well, you see, it is
So it
all
is still
like
a commodity.
transactional,
Yeah.
and women are commodified and children are commodified until maybe the men become men and the women, the girls are marriageable. So ideally, because the man was in that position to transact wealth, or to kind of put in strategies for wealth, if you'd like, he could probably take advantage of that and not fairly treat the women and children at any given time. So that ability to have choice, not to treat people fairly at any given time, and even to met out violations of whatever sort, may be they emotional, financial, and all, could just culminate to what we are saying.
Actually, no, because remember, when I talked about dispute resolutions, it often meant that there had been some misunderstanding. Whether it was between the man and his wife and whatever, that issue would have been discussed within the community. There was a check and balance. There's a point I'm trying to make.
Yes.
The transactional description of this relationship is, in my opinion, a very Western concept, and it's a concept that actually misunderstands what that history was about and the relevance of that particular structure at the time. In the absence, now this is a topic I don't particularly like, but I'm going to get into it anyway. Colonization interfered with the natural process that would have occurred with time for that particular culture to morph. Now that injection, good word, not interference, that injection is now what brings us to present day, because we're grappling with a culture that has been presented in a certain light, okay? And in fact, to understand it, look at the very concept of love from a Western concept and how one ought to see it manifested. In that traditional setting, the anthropologists have spoken to tell me, or those who've written on it, they say it was understood that the sort of love that Hollywood presents us with is something that one found from one's children and from one's female friends. Respect, yes, I'm explaining. Respect that the husband bestowed upon the wife was considered love. It is how it was understood. I'll be told, what are you talking about? And I'm saying, I'm talking about a concept and an interpretation of a concept. The moment there's an injection of another culture and its understanding into it, then I'm afraid a little confusion does come into the discussion, doesn't it?
Not necessarily, because
Very good.
he has talked about past tense. All you've talked about is history. And now yes, and that means it doesn't exist as it was then. It has morphed into a combination of so many aspects. Whatever you're calling Western, whatever is referred to as African, it has morphed. But the idea behind gender activism is not really to alter such, equitable practices, if you like to say. It's more or less to make sure that within that setting, people are as humane as they possibly can be. I mean, without violating my psychology, without violating my physicality, without denying me access to resources, and without denying me, having me as free labor. I think those are the things that are coming out clearly in this.
The very concept of paying for labor, don't you see? The payment wasn't it was in kind.
Why should it be in kind?
Because the wealth was communal. Yes.
But it isn't today.
But what we're saying,
I understand perfectly where we are.
Yes.
And I'm not trying to take us to the past. The reason why I'm bringing in the past is for a very simple reason. there is need to understand that these cultures that we once upon a time had and which have morphed into what we have had very many positive aspects about them, and at the time they served a purpose. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
Nothing more, nothing less.
We agree.
And we agree. We are not here saying all forms of culture are bad. Yeah. But as she's saying, over time it has morphed.
Yeah.
What you knew back then, how many people have, taken the time to educate current communities or current people about it, to be able to take the positive aspects of culture into the modern world that we're in currently. So there's a gap, there's a disconnect there. So you find that the way you're talking about wealth, when you have wealth, then you have the ability to marry 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people. But even the 6
Let's
people
put the ceiling on 10, shall we?
All right, let's say 10 then. So with the 10 that you have, and the aspect you've brought in about, the women being there in the decision, making spaces.
Yes.
Right now, are they able to be in those spaces where they're able to talk about the issues that are affecting them without fearing that if I stand up against Mzee, then I will be ostracized?
Actually,
if I stand up and say that, let's say, for example, the brother to Mzee defiled my child, am I sure that my child will get justice, or will I be told you don't have a say in this situation?
The community I speak of, in current terms, that cultural confusion has morphed into some fairly terrible things. Because one of the things that happen to very many women, should the husband die, is they are disinherited by the very people who should protect them.
Exactly.
Yes. And even the protection mechanisms have over time been bastardized. I'm using a strong term because they no longer exist. And that is where now the commercialization in its full force is actually seen. Because someone who ought to be protected is actually has their right and their wealth taken literally and often forcibly.
Yes.
It is true. And when they resist, the violence that we now speak of is actually meted on them. Some are physically even chased away from the very, very homes that they come from. Yes, that is lived reality.
Yes.
There's something, Judy, you said when you were making your comments, and you said there's some, it was to the effect of reasons why we have this GBV, as in why people would want to meet violence on a woman. Perhaps if you could elaborate on some of these reasons.
So I was mentioning we are mostly in a patriarchal state or country, and what we mean by patriarchy is the feeling that men are more superior compared to women, and therefore because of that there's perceptions that come with that idea. Therefore, if you feel that maybe a woman has said something that they should not have said, considering the fact that they're a woman, then you may feel the need to met violence against them because they're not acting, quote unquote, as a woman is expected to act in the society. There are things like allowed cultures. I'll say allowed cultures because they are allowed, but then they are not supposed to be. For example, child marriage. And personally, I never like the term child marriage because marriage for me is supposed to be something consensual. So when you say child marriage, in what sense is a child consenting
what
to marriage?
What should we call it?
It's forced marriage.
Okay.
It is just that. It's forced. There's no way a child can consent to marriage.
It isn't even marriage.
It's not marriage, exactly.
That is forced violation.
Forced violation, forced defilement.
Yes,
everything.
It can't be marriage.
Yeah, but currently within our constitution or the laws that are existing, that's what it's referred to as child marriage. But there are cultures within us that agree to that. That say when you get to a certain age and you've gone through the female genital mutilation, because that they also call circumcision, but it is not. It is female genital mutilation. So once you've gone through that, the culture legally allows you to then go to the next phase, which is violating this child. And then now you start a cycle where you're perpetually putting this child in violence, whether it be in decision within the household, because this is a child. When will they ever be at the same par level with an elder man that married them? When will this child ever have the courage to stand up and say, now I need to go back to school, or I need to vie for a certain leadership position? So we continuously, with the system that is in, continue to put women in positions of vulnerability.
Yes.
Yeah. So and that's where we find now organizations like us, AMWIK, etc., are trying to see how can we then empower that word, that empower women and girls, enlighten them, sensitize them, so that they're able to now break away from those chains of those cycles of violence.
All right. So you said patriarchy. You mentioned some
harmful cultures and traditions. There's a lot of issues around economic disparities, economic empowerment, where, of course, due to the culture that I've mentioned, or due to the system that is in place, there's where we are expected to be as women. There's the issue around wage disparity, where you find that maybe we'll all be working the same job, but I'm paid less because I'm a woman. Yeah. So, and I'm not expected at any point to be more paid than you in the household. And if in the event that happens, you find somebody says, I beat her because she doesn't know her place in the home, you know? So there's issues of economic disparity coming in and expectations that we just have. But for me, it all boils down back to patriarchy. The expectation that this is where a woman should be in society and this is where a man is supposed to be. And then when those two don't connect, then the issues begin.
When you go, sorry, you were saying.
I think patriarchy is kind of not like existent in the former format, you know, like he says, because patriarchy would give young people access to, or young men access to resources. Let's take a case in maybe Meru. You immediately, by the time you're 13, 14, you have a resource in terms of a farm, a Mira farm. And I think generally that was what existed. But with the laws that were there prior to the current constitution, you'd find that for a woman to own land and make revenue from the land was something that was not a practice. So patriarchy gave the male access to resources quite easily, unlike for the woman, and therefore creating that dependency. But I think over time what has happened, the society has changed, because girls have accessed education, girls are able to access a reasonable income, they're able to grow their careers.
They're equally educated as the men.
And so the dynamic between, the men and female, dependency equation is kind of like a converse to some extent. And given the uncertainty around economic stability both for men and women, at any given time it shifts between the men and women, and that interferes with the dynamics and the negotiation between the two. So for me, I feel like as we go on, as time goes on, we need men allies to understand, what is happening in terms of violations. We see men actually emerging, and I think I've done a study in my capacity as an academic on the men's conference, and I looked at, what the tweets were saying. The feeds from Facebook were saying, the argument of feeling kind of oppressed and kind of forced into expenditures that they don't find meaningful, and therefore it is just an indication as we go along with the AMWIK, and it's just an indication that there is some instability in how economic dynamics play between male and female, and therefore it doesn't just mean that it's just women violated. It could also be
men who have been violated as well. And I was watching several documentaries in the past, of course, on specifically FGM communities where it is deep-rooted. And you find that in those places, even the girls themselves want to undergo FGM because their mothers did it, their grandmothers did it, and for them to feel like, as part of this community, to feel like they belong to this tribe, they have to go through the knife. And if they do not go, it's like there's something missing, that connection to, like for example, I'm a Kamba, that connection to the Kamba community imepotea. Kwa sababu sasa sijatairiwa, sasa mimi si Mkamba halisi. So how can we get that? Because that's pretty deep, To some extent, I even feel like it's spiritual. Because now if you feel like you're less of a Kamba because you've not done this particular cultural practice, getting people out of that mentality is going to take a while,
Well, coming from one of those tribes, I'm half Kuria, half Kamba. the bottom line is you're ostracized
Yeah.
from the community. If you do not undergo the steps as expected, you're ostracized. And again, just going back to that labor debate, the notion that, women are there for transactional purposes means the earlier the transaction, the better. And the women then feel like, first and foremost, in their family setup, they are used for free labor. Secondly, when they get married at whatever age, then they access some sort of resource.
Yes.
So again, it's not just about, feeling spiritual, or it's just the culture, in the sense that, you are really guided through what your position is in the society. So I don't think it's not lack of knowledge. It's really just the community that kind of, makes sure for continuity of the men and access to land.
How would you define patriarchy?
Well, patriarchy is more about, the comfort. I will say briefly, if you study patriarchy, it's more about providing systems and structures for men to access resource and to make decisions.
For men to be dominant.
Yeah, I mean, in those two ways.
Yes.
Yeah, just in those two ways. And you find that ideally, that was with the notion that they will take charge of decisions that will benefit the female in the community.
Yeah.
So that's basically it. But today, with the shift, like I said, economically, it might not work as well.
Yeah.
It might not work as well.
But where the problem arises, when somebody has been in a position of advantage, there is now the element of entitlement that comes with it.
Yeah.
And people don't want to give up positions of entitlement.
Yes.
And then the socialization that people are taken through, those norms are enforced by the men and women alike.
Yes.
True.
Daddy, usiende kwa jikoni. That one, you already started planting the seed.
Yeah.
Okay? And the respect that socialization, the respect balance that ought to exist in that socialization is already skewed. So people growing up in that setup already have that mindset, and they're likely, when they grow up, to also pass on those same values to their children.
Yeah.
It is for this reason that I asked about the question of empowerment. Because in an African setting, in all honesty, the person who actually has the greatest power of influence is the mother, not so much the father.
Yeah, that's true. And for me, when we talk about patriarchy, people often perceive that it's just men that continue to pass down patriarchy. There's also, of course, women. And the way you've said, it's socialization. You grew up knowing that this is the way things are done, therefore you continue to do it as such. But we are also seeing, as time continues, that there are households that no longer do things the way we used to do back in the old days. You find that now more and more parents are encouraging, for example, their daughters go study, science, technology, mathematics, all that, things that were previously left out to the boys. That you are the one who needs to be the engineer. You will be the nurse. You play with the dolls. We are seeing a society that is encouraging people to, be diverse.
It starts at the home in the upbringing.
Yes.
If children all perform the same chores, whether they are male or female, then you planted that seed.
Exactly.
The issue of the education becomes a lot simpler, because it is clear from the home setting that both the girls and the boys are doing the same thing.
Yeah.
Same.
And you'll find that even, like, for example, for ActionAid, we work with certain schools where we are present in, and we have what we call the Boys and Girls Forum, where we have curriculums.
Oh my God.
We have curriculums where students, where teachers are then able to, take the students through curriculums that it's just a form of socialization. And you find teachers are told to put away the bias they have when they're coming into those now forums. Whatever you thought, remove it and now come into this space and remove those biases. Treat these people as children, not boys, girls. You need to behave like this. You're the one who needs to be like the captain of the school because you're a boy, or you're the one who needs to be the one cleaning the teacher's office after they've taken
Staff room.
breakfast. Things like that. So you slowly change the mindset, and we are hopeful that over time then it becomes a discussion.
You've taken over the role that parents should actually have, which means there's a gap in the homes. You see, I find it fairly disturbing when parenting is considered to be a part-time occupation. This isn't a question of the time you spend, but the mindset you have towards it. Okay? The generation that I belong to, we were the generation whose parents ushered in independence. Okay? Traditional in the way we look at things, because that's how we were brought up. So we had a lot of confusion with the education we then had, because you're being inculcated into education that sharply contrasts with what it is that is the traditional background that you've come from. Okay? But why do I keep going back to the tradition? Because it is in this tradition that the pushback that we see comes from. It's been misrepresented, and over time, what comes to the fore is the entitlement that men do not want to lose. Okay? The power dynamics. When you talk about circumcision, even for girls, again, it's the power dynamics that certain people who consider themselves to be gatekeepers of certain communities want to maintain. So, how do you get them to understand that they can play an important role, just as important as the ones they played, and be significant without engaging in an activity that actually condemns and puts those children at a very huge disadvantage?
I think when you look at, like you said, outlook in terms of mindset, the way you've been brought up and what you think, it defines. But the bottom line, outside the home environment, the dynamic changes. It's not as safe as it was previously.
No, it is not.
When it was obviously, just men. I've been to countries like Morocco, the hotel, you get into it's men from the door right to the kitchen. But in Kenya, in other, more or less progressive environments, you find there's that mix and blend. And therefore, it means that dynamic that used to exist, that gave people, the male's privilege, just straightforward privilege. You knew that you would build in your parents' home. You knew that you would access, their resources. You would be the confidant, and your mother and father would support it. Is no longer there.
No, it isn't.
It's no longer there, and you can just see it. If we go age-wise, I think I'm a Gen X, and you can see those who are not probably in stable homes are struggling because you are alone. You don't know how to function as a person.
As a single unit.
Yes, as a single unit. And it becomes an issue. So again, I think the bottom line is, in these 16 days, to be conscious that because of these dynamics, then people just have to kind of alter behaviors so that people can live in harmony. I've read somewhere on the internet that men want peace, but they have one wife, two girlfriends, I don't know what, so many more drama than is necessary, and that simply says that why not simplify things by being more sensitized to psychological issues you impose on others, because people are nowadays talking about things like traumas, cultures that maybe might not be useful in this form and time. So it's important that as we talk about the 16 days of gender activism, to also say that gender is not just about women. It's also about men. It's about everybody in the society. It's about children. But the idea is to just make sure that the society is reflective, not to inflict violations. Not have a girl married at 16 violating 16 human rights. She'll never access, a good income. She will not have parental love. She'll not have education. She's just disempowered totally right from the beginning. So I think the idea is just to make sure that as we go along and as society morphs, we need to morph with it so that at the end of the day, everybody who is of a different gender kind of takes the right role in society.
And maybe I can just add, you talked about change of behavior, that change of perception and attitudes. And maybe going back to the FGM scenario you were talking about, it's looking at how can we change perceptions of even the men in those communities. How can we have them at the forefront of saying, hey, we as the men who were fronting FGM, we no longer want it. We've seen scenarios where for a long time people would be shocked when they see a man carrying a child, even in a hospital, most people will wonder, where is the mother? Where is the mother? All that. And what is so hard about a man carrying their own child? But if you see more and more men carrying children on their backs, the younger children growing up will say, but my dad used to do it, so why can't I do it? So the same applies to just tackling gender-based violence in itself. It's just about having many people that are all talking about, let's end this, let's be done with this. If somebody says no, it's no. If somebody says I'm done with this, say for example relationship, you don't go killing them because you say, oh, I've spent 10 years of my life with you, or I've paid your school fees, and therefore now I need to kill you because you're leaving. We need to have more and more people that just like he said, gatekeepers that are now standing up and saying, no, the time is changing, therefore we need to change with it. And women are humans. You know, there is nowhere that women are not part of the human beings part of it. So even as you're talking about GBV and saying, yes, of course men are also going through violations, but statistically speaking, the huge majority of those going through violations is still women and girls. So
how do we reframe this conversation? Because the them against us conversation is what sometimes dominates this particular sphere of discussion, and yet there is no them against and against us and the other. Why am I saying this? If I look at the understanding, let me backtrack. I do not inhabit the social media space like my brother here. But I thank God for him because he informs me a great deal about what happens in social media. The conversations there, the few times I visit that particular planet, are disturbing. The things that people say to each other and the things, I personally find it jarring. Like, somebody sent me a clip the other day that disturbed the living daylights out of me. If this is actually true, it was a clip that was taken someplace in Meru, according to this. I think you've seen that clip, where there are certain border riders raping a girl. I'm saying it because
I heard about it.
Now, it was sent to me. That thing, when I say it disturbed me, it really, really, really disturbed me. And for this reason, there are communities, and I'm not talking about ethnic groupings. The communities I'm referring to are groupings that people have chosen to form or to join, where certain activities which are completely against the laws of this country are encouraged and endorsed. Okay? And if these things are not stemmed, they are the activities that give rise to femicide. They are the activities that give rise to violence against women, against children. The rise that you hear of somebody has gone and killed his wife, then gone and killed the children. These things, whatever the stressors are, but it's a live conversation and it's spoken of when it happens and then it dies. Now, the mindset that I spoke of is key to this conversation because in the absence of a changed way of looking at things, you cannot change behavior. The behavior reflects how your mind functions and how it works. So if your mind changes, now, where do we begin this change? Because the family setup as we know it keeps changing. The dynamism is interesting. I like going back to the education. Why this? Children from the earliest of times tend to take what they're taught in school very seriously. And they're willing to disagree with their parents over what teachers said.
The teacher said.
I think what has happened to our country and many other countries is the normalization of violence. And, whenever you talk about like femicide or deaths, people just use statistical terms. Instead of like giving vivid lived experiences. We like to say that in the civil society. You need to give a violation a life that people can understand. And there's been a lot of studies around technology facilitated gender-based violence that mirrors, what happens physically. And ideally, just by, giving it such a big term doesn't really give you a visuals. So as research goes on, you find that now people start talking about tefsia, which is now technology facilitated sexual exploitation and abuse. So you have now exact things like image-based violence. You also have things like online facilitated trafficking in the case of baby the girl. And then you also have sextortion. So you see, now you begin to give a vivid impression of what that is. And I think one of the platforms that I really find interesting is TikTok, since I joined last year. TikTok, if you do an analysis of videos around those issues, you have people narrating real life stories. Young girls, young men, narrating real life stories of what happened to them. And that then now gives people an impression, even if people can demonstrate incivility or anger or you know whatever you'd like to say in terms of their comments, it's a lesson learned. So ideally it's to move violation from just the conversation of numbers, 10,000 girls underwent FGM, whatever, so what happened to this girl? How did she progress in life? What life experiences did she have? And Kenya, like any African context, we have the storytelling aspect. So stories really give enhancement to what these violations are. And in that way, it can create consciousness in either gender about what needs to be expected. I've heard of many cases where young men have lost their lives in the hands of, young girls. So it's not what we call intimate partner violence. So it's not just about, just giving a terminology. What does that look like? Could I be the woman earning income and then, starving my man in the house? There are so many aspects that need to come out clearly. So and if you go back to the history of gender activism, it started with functional, behaviors like, okay, I want to go to work. Then it moved to conflict, them and us. Now it's moving towards equity and equality in terms of access and decision making. So I think those are the things that we should really focus on as the conversation moves. What benefit does it have to have a more equitable society where everybody has right to resources, access to decision making? Those are the questions that we really need to be answering in these 16 days of activism.
These changes that we speak of tend to impact very interestingly on both men and women. And it brings about an internal conflict within the individual. You just trying to figure out all these things that are happening to you at the same time and trying to figure out where you fit in. Now, when you then throw in these cultural norms that you've lived by, for instance, the man being the man of the home and being the one to provide, if that source of provision goes, you are immediately emasculated. Now,
it depends.
The reason why I make that statement is because that's how many men feel. That's not what actually happens. You've just lost a job, that's it. Okay? But they feel emasculated because many men identify themselves. The alternate persona is their job. That is why when they introduce themselves, I am CPA so and so. It's okay. I am engineer so and so. Your job and your qualifications are an integral part of you. You are never just so and so. Now, one doesn't seem to understand it. The so and so also means that you must represent a certain degree of material wealth, material well-being. Let's not call it wealth. Okay.
Yes.
Now, the absence of gainful work or employment means that isn't there.
It's no longer there.
So there's the thought process and the feeling of diminished capacity. That immediately induces conflict. And that conflict is what is made manifest in now what we call GBV. Because that frustration is going to find an outlet.
But that goes back to socialization for me. It's that ideal, the way you're saying, I tie who I am to how much I earn. So the moment you take that away from me, then I'm no longer that person. But that is the culture the tradition, the way you've grown up, you've been told as a man, your job is to provide. Therefore, if you're no longer providing, then you're told you're no longer a man. So it's, for me, it's that socialization. How are we teaching societies to deal with issues like loss of jobs? Yeah.
And on that subject of of providing, you have to go into the nitty-gritty. Someone's idea of what they think provision is and what is not
different.
You know, when you're on this side of the desk, controlling the microphone, some of the conversations that you will moderate by day can really shock you.
Yeah.
And it's on this same issue of provision, you know, you being the breadwinner, and you will find a lot of ladies who will tell you that if my man loses his job, then anani saidiaje. You get? So there are some people who will get into a relationship without never having that conversation of, by the way, fine, I'm engineer Paul Mungala Mbuvi and I have this wealth. But the day I lose it, such a because this car will definitely go. This house will definitely will have to, you know, downgrade perhaps to a smaller house. That conversation is seldom, you know, had. Exactly. So when the reality actually sinks, you're in your 30s, you've lost your job. You're no longer probably marketable because younger engineers are now taking those jobs. Then now your wife looks at you as, sasa wewe unanisaidiaje? And then now you start feeling a type of way because now she's going to leave you, and perhaps every single day she reminds you how useless
now
you are.
Now she's going to leave you. She probably just leaves you too.
Why were these conversations
why were these conversations never
These are some of the things that should be
going
done
back to socialization.
It goes back to, let's go back to history. There was no conversation. It was obvious.
First place,
that okay, I come in, I get this land, I will have a house, I will have children and resources. There was no like discussion around. I mean, it was more or less systemic. But now, I mean, the dynamic has changed. That doesn't mean that we should not be cognizant of life changes. There was a time when it was obvious the man would work until retirement, or women would work until retirement, but that's not a given. So I think the conversations we have at home must be realistic. Because at one time, I mean, given the world, it's not just inflicting families or individuals, it's just the world over. So what do we need to really put our wealth together? What do we need to do as a unit or as a as a project team to just make sure we stay afloat? What adjustments do we need to do in life? So I think a lot of times before people even get into marriages, these conversations are never really had. And that's because we probably do not converse about that. We assume that, you know, things fall into place, but really things never really fall.
I was having a conversation 2 days ago with someone. He separated with his girlfriend. They decided to co-parent, but then in the process of co-parenting, he lost his job, so he was unable to provide the same amount of support for the children as he was before. So he was really struggling. And this the woman also denied him access to the children, and he was telling me at one point he had to go for counseling, and there was a lot of intervention from family just to calm him down, because he was saying that he had this thought of hiring an assassin to just go and, you know, kill this woman so that he can gain custody of the children, or even he himself, you know, just go get a panga, sharpen it, and amgoje tu mahali slash. And for him, he was expressing this frustration of not being able to see his kids, and of course imagining the fact that now his woman is probably in another relationship, and this person is enjoying the same things that he used to enjoy. And I just for me, I was just looking at this particular individual, and I was asking myself, hivi ndivyo watu fikiria kwa
what role? There's the role, the economic position or the economic culture that you have immersed yourself into, and the role it plays in your life. Because when you have a relationship in which you quantify each other, you have a problem. You just don't see it, but you have a problem, and it will manifest sooner rather than later.
Because you're not really, like, I like the word pontify. Nobody's talking about the dynamic. What quality time do you spend having conversations? What quality time do you spend planning for your family? What is the dynamic
what is your
of the plan? What is your fallback plan? You can also go to the village and still survive. You know, so I think ideally, with the dynamics, change of dynamics in access to economic empowerment, to resources. It's good to always have a conversation that makes people know that beyond these material things, there's something concrete. If there's nothing concrete, then that's why things will always fall apart.
UN Women this year, they've said that the theme is Unite to End Digital Violence Against All Women and Girls. Of course, you touched on it a bit, talking about ending violence online for women, and we are seeing that a lot, especially right now that the digital space has blown up. Exploded, So what are you doing in your individual, and I'll start with you, what are you doing in your individual capacity to ensure that this theme this year is celebrated?
So for us, it's a lot about awareness creation, because just like you've said, it's blown up, the digital space. The digital space is used for so many things, for businesses, for entertainment, for many things. But now over time, it has also become a space where violence manifests in a different way, and it goes back to the traditional ways of violence, but now on a online platform. So ours is really just raising awareness around the existence of this, but also again being able to tell communities, in case this happens, this is what you need to do. These are the steps that you need to do to follow in order to report this violence from occurring, because again, most of the times people do certain things, for example, like sharing images just for purposes of either intimidating you or either getting money from you. They're nudes now. Yeah, they're just trying to shame you, because majority of the times, if you're thinking about your nudes being all over the place, you feel ashamed. You'll not want to walk around everywhere, so you'll probably want to succumb to the threats that this person is giving you. But there are laws in place, right, that protect people from such incidents once they occur. So really, it's just raising awareness around that, but also looking at how can we tighten the existing laws and policies around digital online violations. So if, say, for example, Facebook is clearly seeing that this is an image, I'm going back to the video for the woman who was being gang raped by the men. Why should that continue circulating? The moment it appeared online, that TikTok or whatever should have brought it down immediately. That is the role that they should play as that conduit where these messages are being sent, where these images are being sent, etc. So how do we hold to account those people as well? Because they're making money through us as well. So how do you hold them to account? How does the government also hold these bodies to account? So it is really a whole lot of awareness towards the communities, but also looking at the existing laws and policies.
Robi, over to you.
Okay, in my other life, I'm a media scholar and gender. So since 2016-17, I've done over 8 or so researches around technology-facilitated GVB. It started with the plight to understand, journalists, because AMWIK is more or less featuring, focusing on journalists, and I did interviews and interviews with anchors at that point, about 15, and they could talk about workplace related violations. Some of them would talk about the nexus between online and offline violations, to the extent that they had to relocate, or you'd find they were being followed offline, and of course the psychological torture, the mental torture about it. Then moved on to study prominent women. The pattern is the same. We had a national conference that was organized by Article 19, where we presented the findings, and prominent women leaders, that is Millicent, what's her name, Esther Passaris, Martha Karua, and Millie Odhiambo also graced that. And from that time, conversation around gender, even if it looks in civil, has changed over time. And I've gone on to do several repeat studies, to the extent, like now I'm talking about TEFSIA, where now it talks about the specific ones. And this year I've just finished one on digital censorship of LGBTQ with AQ Studios. So the idea is to really unpack. You need to unpack that so that when you present it, it will capture, attention of media houses. It will be in round tables. It will be in conferences. This year I didn't go for AWIM. Everybody's in Ethiopia, kind of driving the Kigali declaration against GBB. So my contribution is really to create knowledge around that area, and in AMWIK, create policies that will help women, talk about women in leadership, safety at the workplace, online harassment, all those kind of things that are important.